everybody. I am very pleased to have you all on the call today. I think you're going to come away with some valuable insights, and also being respectful of your time. We're going to try and keep it as interactive as possible as well. There will be a couple of questions we're going to pop in and out of the webinar, and then you can just answer in the chat. Stephanie's here to help us manage that chat section and try and address questions where we can. Otherwise, we will address it at the end of the show. But today, remember the 5th of November. So thankfully, there's going to be no fireworks on this show, other than a lot of excitement, of course. But yeah, another thing is, as I was looking at the calendar, 1 month and 20 days away from Christmas. So this year is really moving along at a rapid pace. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark. I'm co-founder and managing director of Kwelanga Training. And today I'm just going to be introducing the topic, introducing your guest speaker, Daniel. Daniel's been with our business for well over 15 years, and for a large majority of it, he's been on the Exco team. But what he does have is some deep insight and expertise when it comes to graduate development programs and workplace readiness. He has probably the most experience in the team in terms of working with clients on these kind of programs. So today, I know that you're going to benefit from some of the insights he's going to share. Daniel, if you don't mind just scrolling to that agenda so I can quickly, before I ask a question or two, and we can get it on from there. So what can you expect from the session today? Daniel's going to take you through a couple of topics, but most importantly, why GDPs matter. We call it a GDP, Graduate Development Program, also sometimes referred to as Workplace Ready. And then what are the critical success factors for a successful workplace readiness program? The value and importance of stakeholder engagement, often a step that gets left out when people embark on these kind of programs. How do we measure the success? Daniel will share some insights there. And of course, your content selection. How do we decide what's best for our group of graduates or for our workplace readiness program? Then Daniel will take us through a use case, and at the end of it, we will do a Q&A session to address any of those queries that you might have raised. If we happen to run out of time and we don't get to everything, don't fear, we will send out a recording of the webinar. And then, of course, with that, we will also include any answers to questions that we didn't address during the webinar. But before I hand over to you, Daniel, 2 questions. If you don't mind pulling them up on the board. I'm curious, for those of you who know me, it's one of my favorite statements, always be curious. So yeah, I'm going to start. I'm curious, and pop in the chat if you have. Number 1, have you or are you currently running a graduate development program, or conversely, a workplace readiness program? I'm going to repeat the question. If you have, just pop into the chat there. I'm curious to see your answers. Have you or are you currently running a graduate development program or workplace readiness? Nice. Okay, so quite a few people already underway and being proactive. We know that these are not new concepts or programs, but really pleased to see that we've got an audience here that's well involved with graduate programs. So that's excellent. I'm sure they're going to test you, Daniel, with some good questions. Oh, Rekhan, there I see you. Welcome, Rekhan. Good to see you part of this webinar too.
I think we might be able to lean into these guys and ask them the questions. They might have the answers for us. Indeed.
Mzor, welcome. Yeah, I'm going to leave that to you, Daniel. Maybe coordinate with Steph. We can try and answer some of the queries in the chat on the fly. And then secondly, this is the really crucial question because it'll help shape some of the way we position the information today. What are the biggest challenges faced while planning and or running the program? What are the biggest challenges faced while planning and or running the program? And I don't want to throw out our experiences of feedback that we've seen, but certainly to get a raw data from the audience to see what are you challenged with at the moment when you're your GDPs or your workplace readiness programs, or are they just running smoothly? Maybe you don't need any help. Maybe you can teach us a thing or two or share some of those insights with our audience, and we can pick up from what you've learned from these programs. Internal commitment from leaders to mentor, coach, and develop. Absolutely. I think that piece, Daniel, that you're going to address on stakeholder engagement and mapping, that's crucial. Get that right up front. It might go a long way to addressing some of that challenge.
Most definitely.
Daniel, from your experience, what have you seen? There I see another one. Integrating the content and the application, measuring impact, finding the program that fits the needs. Not enough time. That's the thing. Time from leadership. I think time is always a thing when it comes to these programs, because a lot of it is behavior based, certainly in terms of the areas that we cover. And often that means time to practice, to do workplace application, to get some feedback, to do some demos, and that takes time. Yep, budgets. Okay, Daniel, there, I think you've got some sense of a framework. Leaders not prepared to release grads for training days, operational budgets, so the financial implications. Okay, wave that one, Daniel, over to you.
Yeah, so thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. Thank you guys for your answers here, and certainly no surprises from a preparation perspective. I suppose at the end of the day, we all face similar challenges, and we always want to know what the answers are to them. The reality is that a graduate development program often comes with a lot more weight and requirements than what we realize it for. So I wanted to start the conversation just with a topic around the importance of graduate development programs, and specifically just a fleeting thought I had this morning while preparing for the session as well. If we think about our current workforce that we have in most of the environments that we're working in, and I'm talking specifically here in South Africa, we have, well, they say the most diverse generational workforce at the moment. Some say up to 5 different generations working in a workplace environment. And the reality of that is that the older generations are also moving along in their working careers. And we're finding that there's a big gap in the talent pool by not developing sufficiently from the younger generations entering into the workplace. The key challenge we have here is also that those people who are entering the workforce are not coming with the equipped tools and skills to actually function effectively. They might be studying well, they might be working in an environment at university that gives them a lot of technical skills, but when the rubber meets the road and they need to start performing in a workplace, they are completely out of their depth. Now, reality is that unfortunately not easy for people to enter into the workplace unless there's a structured guidance for them as well. And whilst we are referring to the webinar as a graduate development program, I also actually want to lean more into the workplace readiness component of this, because grad development normally implies there's some sort of learnership or technical skill that works through the program. So if we use the term graduate development program or workplace readiness program, please accept they are kind of interchangeable for the purpose of what we're discussing today. And obviously, depending on how you structure and put together at the office, that's where you'll use the terminology for that. So interestingly, and I don't want to make this a political debate around the efficiencies of workplaces and where we are, but if we look at youth in South Africa, and specifically the age group of 25 to 34 years old, which is typically the workforce that enters into our space if they are graduates, up to 40.5% of the youth in South Africa are unemployed. And of that, 23.9% of graduates are unemployed. So we do have a talent pool at our disposal. The challenge we have is that these talent pools aren't often looked at because there's a massive workload that goes with developing these people to become more competent in the space that they're in. Having said that, we can't avoid the fact that graduate development programs or workplace readiness programs carry a tremendous benefit to a business. Specifically, when you're looking at putting a proper program together, you find that those candidates that are in the program are integrated into the workplace a lot more effectively. Typically, their productivity also improves because they're given the guidelines to work through and enhance their environment that they're working in. We also find that obviously we try and align their professional approach and their attitude to the business. And when we've had discussion groups with key HR role players in the industry, we've often found that they have a challenge at bringing youth into the workplace because they don't have the right mindset to build towards a long-term career. They're there to advance themselves, but not willing to invest in their own time. So graduate development program gives you the opportunity to enhance that ability of the individuals. With that, obviously, also you tend to get a higher retention with staff because if they are trained up, they're able to integrate into your workplace and you're able to make use of them along the way. And obviously then with that, what you are able to do is you're able to build some form of talent pipeline that allows for succession planning in your business, where these graduates can eventually become first-line managers, and from there, eventually they can become managers or leaders of the business itself. So from a business perspective, it is crucial to understand that these grad programs often do have a positive impact. It's obviously important that we make sure that this positive impact is understood from the earlier stages of the program. Otherwise, we do tend to fail, and a lot of the challenges you've listed in the chat actually become reality. From a graduate perspective, the benefits they have is obviously they build confidence in the workplace. And if you have the right mentoring program that it is attached to the workplace skills, workplace readiness program, you find that the graduates do tend to develop themselves with the right focus and goals in mind. Obviously, you're looking at improving their ability to communicate, stronger work ethic, and obviously also enhancing their employability. Now, it is a reality that not everybody gets taken up into the program after or into the business after the program. So obviously part of your strategy and initial planning must be whether or not you're looking at integrating people or if you're going to be moving them out into the workforce after the program. And if that is the plan, then obviously you also need to build capacity in that individual to make them more employable beyond the program that they've been on. And then obviously if it's the long game that you're playing and you'd like to employ them and keep them going, that also builds a lot more solid career foundation for these individuals. I've often heard from clients where they indicate that people have been working with them for a year or two, but they've not quite found their feet yet. And this is often indicative of the fact that possibly the program that they were on, or if they weren't on the program, didn't set a solid foundation for them to work with there. So if we look at the graduate development program as a whole, there are massive benefits for business and for individuals. And obviously, ultimately, the end goal here to grow the business to a point where they can incorporate people along the way. Some of the critical success factors that I would like to highlight here, and this might not be new to everyone, but maybe it would be also areas of awareness that often sometimes gets forgotten along the way. When you're planning your graduate development program or workplace readiness program, there are 6 key elements that you want to look out for. First being your structured onboarding and rotations. Now, what I mean by this is obviously sometimes what happens is graduates are just brought in through an advert that is published online, and people can apply to come and attend this graduate program. It's a limited period, almost like an internship. But there's very seldom a job spec that is attached to the program. It's merely looking at bringing someone in with no experience and seeing where they will fit in. The challenge you have with that is if you're not building specific job profiles for the program to be fulfilling, you might find that you end up just rotating learners every year and you don't have them integrated into your workplace because they're not a good fit. So it is important to look at linking the graduates that you are appointing into the program to your business goals. And if your business goal is to build capacity in a certain area or department, and the graduates are supposed to fill that space, you must make sure that you align to that specific goal when you're doing your recruitment and your onboarding of the graduates. The second part, which is quite important for that, is to ensure that the graduates are given the opportunity to rotate through the various departments that could potentially influence their placement later on. It's not typical that a graduate will be placed in one business unit only. From time to time, they would be rotated to learn elements of the business. And obviously, finding the right fit for that person is quite a key part to the graduate program success along the way. So once you've got the structure, the onboarding and the placement of the individuals right, then the second component is quite important. And some of you mentioned this as some of the challenges you faced. And this is the mentoring and the coaching of the graduates throughout the program. Now, as you mentioned, a lot of the times business isn't ready to coach or mentor people because they are too operationally involved in the environment that they're working in. And the challenge you have with this is that if you're not giving the support and guidance, that graduate's not going to develop into the person you would like them to be. So it's also important to determine very early on what that mentoring role and purpose is going to be in the program itself. And we'll talk about stakeholder mapping a bit later, but you can diversify the participation of those in the business who can become mentors or coaches for the individuals that you work with. And obviously with that, part of that, the reason that doesn't work is that you don't always have a regular feedback loop that provides feedback to the coach or the mentor as well as the delegate. And we'll talk about tracking and performance monitoring a bit later on. But the critical part of any graduate program is that you have an internal mentor that can support the development of this graduate itself. You'll see in the case study I share at the end, where the graduate program was actually supplemented by a batch of graduates that had completed the program the previous year, and they becoming the candidates of the mentors for the new intake every year that we work with. More about that a little bit later on. So then the third part of your grad program that requires quite a lot of thought is the actual content that you're going to put together and the roadmap that you want to build around the skills development. Now, in the case of graduates that are coming fresh from university, they come with a tremendous amount of theoretical knowledge. They've studied to become specifically competent in a certain area, but they seldom have the workplace knowledge to be able to integrate into the workplace. So as learned as they are with regards to their technical skills, they might not have the confidence to communicate well in a meeting or to present themselves in a situation where information needs to be provided. So part of your content is to look at how it's curated and how it integrates into the program for the duration of the program. And it's not just looking at soft skills as an example. There are typically 3 categories that you want to work with. And these would normally be induction, which obviously talks to the company's ethos and the values and the ethics of that business, some of the policies and all of that. It's crucial that that conversation happens early on in the program. We then look at any technical skills and workplace skills that require specific competencies that obviously that person is fulfilling in their role. And then we look at some of the soft skills that can help individuals integrate into the workplace. And I'll talk a bit more about that a little bit later on when we discuss content curation from a Kwelanga perspective. Obviously, the key thing here is also not to dump all of the content into the first week or 2 of the program. We often find that there's time constraints on how these programs work. And unfortunately, a lot of the times when everything is condensed into a short space of time, you don't have a lot of success in practical application post-training. So what we also often recommend is that you look at the full learning program from start to end, and you separate daytime or practical time in between the sessions, and you offset your induction from your top technical skills from your soft skills, so that you have a more inclusive program that runs throughout the period of that grad program. Obviously, this is also on the assumption that the grad appointment will be for a period of time, possibly 6 months, a year, or even 2 years, depending on how the placement is made. And then obviously with that, if your content is curated, you also want to build a personal development plan that allows the individual to grow into that role. Now, as we know, not everybody learns at the same rate or pace. And it's important in this instance then that we are able to give them the tools to allow them to learn and apply their thinking along the way. And again, yeah, it's not always a simple process to complete this, but if you curate your content properly, you would have a higher success rate in the program. The fourth component of this is to look at the cultural fit and inclusion of the graduates. Now, as with any placement, it's very difficult to determine whether or not someone will be a good fit for your business. So creating a clear understanding of what it is that you'd like to achieve with the grad program, and also ensuring that those individuals that are being appointed understand the fit of the business. It is important then to get that right with regards to the initiatives that you run. Now, what we've seen in the past is that if you look at social engagements in the grad program where you're bringing individuals into the workplace and giving them opportunity to mix with those people that are established, you find that the bonds that are built with them are a lot stronger. And then obviously they understand the space that they're in a lot better. Obviously, another critical factor of anything that we do in life, but specifically in the grad program, is to look at performance monitoring, and also to know that there will be regular check-ins or climate checks, if you want to call it that, around how the progress of the program is working and how the individuals are integrating properly into that program. Ultimately, you want to make sure that these evaluations are done with the right stakeholders in mind, so that we can also track and do a litmus test to see whether or not we are on the right track with the program. And obviously, if you are looking at running multiple iterations of this program over time, you can start refining these checkpoints that you're working with and start managing them effectively along the way. And then obviously the last part of the success factor of this is to know what the end of the program looks like. In other words, what is the exit strategy for this learner? Are they going to be integrated into the workplace? And if they are, obviously the focus and the drive is around making sure they are employable within your team. But if it's a fixed term period and they're not going to be integrated, you want to ensure that they are capable of moving beyond the program into a space where they can market themselves. So yeah, including something like a interviewee skills course at the end of the program, or maybe even a program on how to build a LinkedIn profile, could help graduates work through their integration into the workplace beyond your space that you're working in. So if we look at those 6 critical factors that we work with, if you can address each of these factors effectively as part of your planning and part of your integration, you're more likely to have a better success in the program itself. Mark, I see you entered back in here. Was there a comment that you wanted to add or a question you wanted to ask?
Yes, actually, yeah, well picked up, Daniel. Thank you for sharing. I think those are vital components to any program. But I'm curious to know from the audience, this step number 1 and 2 for me is critical up front. Whether any of our organizations that are on call do a departmental orientation session. So, for example, do you prepare that department in terms of expectations, what they could expect and what their responsibilities are for the graduates that are entering into their realm? Do you perhaps set up graduate go-to champions, people that can fill the link between that department or manager and then obviously the graduates? Because that's something, it's been tested in some organizations and successfully implemented. To what extent? So I'm actually curious just to know if you do it, just pop in the chat. Yes, we do an orientation session with our managers in terms of what they can expect, what are their responsibilities with grads, in terms of allowing them to be released for training and ongoing development, and to what extent you can use them or mentor them within the particular role. So if you're doing anything like that and having success, please pop me a message there in the chat. I'd be keen to know how you're doing that. Thanks, Daniel. Back to you.
Thanks, Mark. And I suppose that leads on to our next conversation or topic in the conversation, and that's around stakeholder engagement. And I think crucially, sometimes we fail to consider all of the role players involved. And a lot of the times graduate programs aren't successful because we don't have follow through from those who need to be involved in the program. So I've tried to just look at it from a holistic perspective and looking at early on engagement. If you are starting to plan the program, who needs to be involved and what is their role in the program itself? So typically, if you're looking at this, obviously HR and L&D tends to play a big part. Obviously, recruitment also plays a big part. So let's put that collectively as HR. Often program design and onboarding is taken care of here, and obviously the coordination of the events are also taken care of here. Crucially, this part of the project is probably one of the most important parts, because you have to also make sure that the program integrates into the workplace and aligns to operational limitations. The second group of people that need to be considered are your line managers. And the reason for this is that typically these line managers will be the people that will release your people or the graduates for training. They will typically be the mentors of these graduates that typically work with them and build them along the way. Now, if you don't get buy-in from them early on into the program and explain to them what their role would be, you might find that they detract from the program and actually become quite a barrier to the success of the program. So it's important to have these conversations early on and set the boundaries and requirements from them. Then critically, you need approval from EXCO. Now, EXCO in this instance might not be directly involved with the grad program, but they would certainly drive the purpose and the reason for it. I've seen in some programs, the program runs really well, but it's sometimes not renewed for a follow-on year because there's not enough strategic alignment to the business itself. So it is important here to look at what the purpose of the grad program is and how it supports that strategic intent of the business. And if you can attach, for example, a grad program to succession planning, or you could attach it to enabling a team that is short-staffed, then you would find that you would have a higher success in the program itself. The fourth component is typically mentors and buddies. Now, depending on the environment that you're working in, these mentors can be other graduates that have been on the program before, if you're running a multi-year iteration of it. It could be individuals that are in the business that are possibly someone that could help navigate these individuals along the way. So obviously the key at the end of the day is to ensure that you have people that are interested and invested in the idea of having a buddy or a mentor that can support them along the way. And obviously critically at the end of the day, you also need your graduates, and these graduates, they need to be integrated, they need to be engaged, and they must also take some ownership onto the program and ensure that they are able to participate to the expectations that are set up for them. But it is important for me here, if you are looking at stakeholder engagement, first of all, involve the business leads early on in the program to explain what it is, explain how it's going to work, and also explain the expectations that are required from them. It's important to hold the kickoff workshop, if you can, with the key players, where you present the program once it's been finalized, where you get buy-in, you share calendars, you discuss principles of what the program is going to be about, so there are no surprises. And I can tell you now, if you are acutely aware of your own operational environment, make sure you have the schedule defined early on and make sure there's commitment early on, because the minute you start shuffling dates around and programs start getting implemented or influenced because of operational needs, the program also suffers for that. And obviously what you want to do here is also provide stakeholder toolkits to allow these managers and the people involved to understand what their roles will be and where their focus should be for the business itself. So if we can look at this holistically and we understand that these are the key role players that need to be involved, we bring them on early on, you are likely to have an opportunity to grow better with your program along the way. Okay, moving on from that, obviously some of the key success factors for continuous improvement and how to measure that. Obviously, the retention rate post the program is one of the key success factors. If your goal is to integrate people into the workplace and you're retaining the numbers, that means that you're having a good program that you work with. Obviously, the graduate satisfaction is a critical part here, because if they are happy with the program, they're more likely to also want to stay on. They won't go job hopping and running away from your business to the next pay slip that might be slightly higher, because they will see the value in what they work with. If you get feedback from your management team and there's integration that is successful within the team and it's relieving operational stress, obviously that would be a good indicator of success. And then obviously you could also use the performance review outcomes to determine success here. And whilst obviously we want to track performance along the way, you will see more success in the behavior change and the implementation of people or integration of people into the workplace than you'll see on a score sheet for a performance review document. So a lot of the intangible stuff are also good indicators here. Critically, if you want to be measuring the success of a program, you need to look at tools that can help with this. So either doing climate surveys or check-ins with sessions, and these check-in sessions can be structured throughout the program, or you can even get to a point where you have a closeout presentation or assessment that the graduates have to complete. And that gives some purpose towards the end of the program to say, whilst you are on this program, it's good to be learning, but you also have to prove to us or show us what you've learned along the way. So I'll share with you something about that in the use case that we have a bit later on. Okay, so again, yeah, the success of any grad program is measured at various stages of the program. And obviously, you want to ensure that you have mechanisms in place for this. Okay, third, if we then look at some of the other areas of success, and I know we mentioned earlier some of the challenges we faced with regards to the grad programs. I'm going to ask those who said earlier that you are running a grad program at the moment. Could you maybe share with us what made your program a success? Was there any takeaways here that we could consider, that we could look at to ensure we are on the right track with planning our grad programs? Absorption rate is critical, obviously, and then obviously feedback and success stories. That's nice to hear. And obviously you want to make use of those success stories to build credibility for the product or the program for the follow-on years that you work with as well. Thanks, Fadil, for sharing. Okay, so let's then look at the next big component of grad programs. And I think this is quite important to look at because sometimes there's a single focus on one specific area, but not specifically around the holistic need for development along the way. Now, again, yeah, I'm talking based on exposure and experience that we've had as a provider of service to our clients over the last 10, 15 years in these programs. But they obviously, I'm trying to also be I'm trying to look as wide as possible for that as well. So if we talk about course selection or content curation, the critical part of it is that your program must align to the objectives of the program, of the grad program or the business. If you are not aligning to the business and you're seeing this as a separate project outside of the business growth, you will find that there's a lot of resistance for the business. You want to make sure that there's an opportunity for people to align to the environment that they're working in. Now, three main categories that we can talk about, and we mentioned it earlier, is an induction program that integrates people to the workplace specifically. And here you're talking HR policies, you're talking workplace values and morals, all of the things that make your entity who they are. You want to integrate people into this environment. Then you want to look at technical and workplace specific skills. Now, this is sometimes easy to identify because the candidate has studied something specific and you want that person to develop that competency in the workplace itself. So that is the key. And obviously there it's about recruiting the right people as well. I did see a comment earlier on that sometimes people say they've got the skill, but they don't really have it. I'm sure we get that when we recruit people as well. They oversell their CVs, but the day they start working, you realize it's not quite there. So the difference here, a grad program gives you the opportunity to develop those skills if they are lacking. And then the last component that's quite crucial, and this is where we like to step in, is the soft skills component. And I'll share a little bit more about that. Obviously, conducting skills gap analysis with new graduates is a first prize with regards to seeing where the gaps are. Unfortunately, though, a lot of the times the program is already predefined before you even recruit people. So, or sometimes even people are recruited into a program that's already there. So when you're doing skills gap analysis, it could be just to see where there needs to be a specific or more targeted focus on content. Doesn't mean that you add or remove content. You merely look at where you want to focus the energy for the program. And then the success to any of the training that you do is to allow for enough time for practical application. And I can't stress this enough. I've had clients requesting grad programs that run for 2 weeks solid with no break, where we cover 5 or 6 topics, and the graduates come out of that so confused that they actually don't even know where to start. So our recommendation is to normally look at the program, look at what components are needing to be integrated, prioritize the main topics based on a timeline, and then allow for enough time to implement the learning along the way. Now, implementation here is where the learning happens, where people have the opportunity to apply their thinking in the workplace, and they're able to go and integrate their thinking and using soundboards from other people to allow them to see whether or not they understood what they were covering. Now, if we look at the soft skill component of any content program that you put together, Kwelanga training looks specifically at 3 core competencies. We look at workplace readiness skills. I'll unpack that in a minute. We look at interpersonal skills, and we look at communication skills. Now, we've developed our training needs analysis tool to have a specific evaluation component just for graduate development programs. So you can have your candidates complete this, and they will get a full report on where their gaps are based on these competency sets that we have. Now, I'm not, thanks for sharing that, Steph, in the chat. The post is there with regards to where the tool is available from. I'm not pitching the product today, but I think what's important here is that you can use the TNA to actually decide on what content will be more crucial for your team of graduates if you haven't put that together. To give you an idea of what we've put together here, when we look at the 3 categories on interpersonal skills, specifically, we look at things like building workplace relationships. We look at managing pressure and maintaining balance, developing resilience, and even emotional intelligence. These are some of the examples of content that can be identified based on the gaps that the individuals have. Now, the interpersonal skills are often the skills lacking with individuals that come into a workplace. They don't understand the work culture. They are maybe challenged or not as confident to communicate with people. So by giving them the tools to engage on a more professional level, it also eliminates a lot of the risk that we have there. With regards to communication skills, we all, the bane of our lives is social media and engagement on social media, especially if you're an older person like me. So yeah, you want to make sure people are communicating in the right business language, if you want to call it that, or the right approach to business. So yeah, things like email etiquette could work, mastering business communication, or even presentation skills or business writing. And again, yeah, the TNA tool will identify where the biggest gaps are and make recommendations around that content. And then the third component would be typical skills that we take for granted sometimes, things like time management, workplace etiquette, customer service, and even just things like building a personal brand and building an identity for yourself. Now, these are some of the examples of what content could be included into a program, depending on what developmental needs you might have from that. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions on this a little bit later, if any questions pop up on that as well. With regards to the examples that we have, and yeah, I'd just like to share a use case of a client that we've been working on for the last 8-9 years on a graduate development program. The reason this program worked quite well is they've looked at all the 6 components that we discussed earlier, and they integrated the program into the workplace itself. This specific client is in the FMCG market, and most of their graduates sit in the production space of the business. So from the beginning of the program, these graduates are identified with a single purpose in mind. They are going to exit the program and be integrated into a divisional or component of the business, be it shared services, production, or whatever the case might be. So they often are also then identified early on to then say, this is going to be your journey with us. Their intake is between 16 and 20 people per annum, and their absorption rate is about 90%. Now, if you're running a multi-year program, and those of you guys who are running programs at the moment, you'll know 90% absorption rate is pretty good. And the reason I think the success here works is that they are integrated workplace assignments that go with the program, and they offset technical learning from induction, from soft skills training throughout the period of the program. They don't just dump people into a learning block of a number of days without giving them the opportunity to work out the kinks of their learning. The critical part of the success for this program is to exit out of this program. The graduates in the second year have to do a presentation to the Exco team, and it's normally through a graduation that happens at the end of the program. It's well attended with over 50 or 60 managers and leaders of the business that attend that session. And they then have to present on their learnings through the program. And they are tasked to identify inefficiencies in the production space or in the business. And then they are asked to come up with solutions on how to resolve those issues in the workplace. So what's nice here is there's a tangible outcome that is linked back to the learning. And obviously they use the learning experiences that they had to tie back and say how it helped them to achieve the goals that they worked with. The second part of this that's really effective for this team is that they have a mentorship program that is integrated into the program. They use the second year graduates as mentors to the first year graduates. So they are closely affiliated to each other around how to integrate into the environment, what to look out for, what to expect. And then they have a second mentor, which is the line manager of the area that the individual is working in. And in this space, they're able to then get guidance around how to implement some of the learning into a practical space that they work with. And if we can understand that the intricacies of all of this is tied in where you have the CEO of the business coming at the end of the program and working and being participative of the program, you can see why it was a successful for them as well. I've listed some of the content that we cover here, but for the purpose of today, it's not really necessary to cover the topics we cover because it's very specific to the environment. But to understand that for this environment or this client, the program's been successful because they considered all 6 components that we spoke about earlier around building an effective plan for a grad program. And there's a lot of information to unpack here. Hopefully, the information I've shared with you gives you some pause for thought. Ultimately, I just wanted to close off the session by saying what we would like to look out for here when a grad program is being considered is understand the objectives of the program. If you can, also link it to the business goals. You want to involve the correct stakeholders at the right time and continuously throughout the program. You want to ensure that the content that you select matches the objectives or the goals that you've set out for the program. And then obviously you need to recruit according to the needs and not just to fill seats for the program itself. If you have this plan in mind and you have this high-level view of what needs to work, you're well on your way to get a program that's set together. And obviously, from a training perspective, Kwelanga is quite keen to support you if there's ever a need for you to build a program and where we can support that. And we are also ultimately happy to share our experiences with you along the way. I'd like to open the panel and the room to any questions there might be. Mark, I don't know if you want to close out with any comments.
Thanks, Daniel. No, well done. Thank you for sharing those insights. I think we've received value down the line, and I'm pretty sure 1 or 2 questions will pop out. As always, you know, I love stats. I love statistics. Wherever I can find anything, I'll pull it up. And there was one statistic that I saw also from the Workplace Intelligence Report around grad programs. And the statistic was that 77% of grads having gone through the program said they learned more in those 6 months of the grad program than they did in their 3 or 4 years at university. So there's no doubt the value of a good grad program can help integrate people, because I mean, the learning we get at university or Technicon or wherever it is to some degree very technical and very siloed. But when you come into a workplace, there's so many different dynamics, and in particular people dynamics, and you're often not set up for that component of your workforce journey. I don't know if any questions have popped up. Anybody have anything that they would like to share or ask?
Yes, we have had a question come through from Fadil. He's just checking, does Kwelanga offer any interventions for first-time mentors?
Steph, do you want to maybe unmute Fadil so you can just elaborate on the question a bit? Because I have an answer, but I don't want to just jump the gun here.
Good morning. Thank you, Daniel and team. Yeah, my question is around, I mean, we understand the importance, the role that a mentor plays in supporting the grads, right? Whether that mentor is the leader or whether it's an actual mentor or a previous grade type of mentor. And we found that mentors are not necessarily equipped to provide the necessary support to our grads in the workplace, right? They will use the best of their ability, I suppose, based on experience, but they just don't have the necessary skills to support our mentors. Our grads. So is there anything available to prepare mentors, especially first-time mentors?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the quick answer to that is yes, we do have something that we can offer them. What we've done in the past is we've actually offered a session to the mentors where we go take them through the difference between mentoring and coaching, because very often people think they actually need to be a coach rather than a mentor. So we do define the differences between the two, but we also then provide them with tools on how to be more effective in that mentorship role. So we provide them with communication tools and dialogue toolkits that they can use when they have these sessions to try and shape a better result from the individuals that they work with.
Wonderful. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Daniel, we've had another question come through from BC where I have unmuted.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I just wanted to find out from your experience, what are some of the creative ways that a company can get its graduate program recognized in terms of triple BEE without necessarily having to implement the YES program? Because what I often find is that firstly, the YES program is quite expensive to implement, and then the company will have its own customized program, but because it's not an accredited program or necessarily registered with a CETA or aligned with a CETA, then it doesn't gain the necessary recognition in terms of triple BEE.
Yeah, so I mean, content-wise, that's always going to be a challenge if you're looking at purely claiming from a skill spend perspective. There are ways and means that you can tack on an accredited module or something like that to try and claim some of that spend. The reality of it is there's also the landscape around accreditation is changing drastically in the next 6 to 8 months. And in fact, we're going to have a webinar series on that starting later November that talks about those changes. But the short answer for that is there's not always a solution from a skill spend perspective. However, if you partner with an entity that has a high B score or level, you could potentially claim around procurement spend, and you can even look at ESD spend and claim points through that. So what we do tend to look at from a learning perspective is we're always single-mindedly looking at BE points as a skill spend component. And the reality is there are other areas on the scorecard that you can actually develop. And also, obviously, one of the unintended consequences, if you are building graduates and they become managers, you're actually also addressing your scorecard on management control down the line. So it could be a long-term view that you could work with there as well. Not sure if that answers your question.
Yes, thanks, it does. But I was specifically looking at skill spend, but I appreciate the broader view to say we could look broader than if you can't impact it on skills, but we could impact it in the other elements. So thank you.
Definitely. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I just want to jump in there because we have seen clients included on learnership programs where they integrate their GDP on a learnership program, and then you sell it as a complete learnership with some components of the GDP included, because you're not limited with a learnership to just cover those particular areas. You can actually extend beyond them.
Wow,
So that's on the learnership side. And then, of course, some of the programs that Daniel's spoken about in terms of content are already standalone unit standards. So those could still, they will be those category E's on the matrix. So you do get some score there, but that's only available until the end of June 2026. And then, of course, the QCTO is going to come into power.
Yes.
So a lot of those unit standards will then fall away.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think those are possibly your best options.
It's a good question to ask, and you have to ask it early on, because obviously that will also define what content you put into your program. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we can wrap up the session, guys. I appreciate your time. I'll still hang around for a few more minutes for those who do have questions. If not, you're welcome to pop off. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you giving us an hour of your time to come listen to us. Hopefully we've sparked some ideas and some thoughts. Please reach out to us if you'd like. Our contact details are on screen. Our team are more than happy to come and meet with you, drink your coffee at your offices, and chat about the next grad program you want to put out.
Daniel, thank you very much. Steph, thank you. Appreciate everybody for joining us, and have a good week.
Thank you, everybody.